Welcome back to another video, and this is my June eyeshadow palette review video. Welcome back, and today is my bi-monthly eyeshadow palette review video. So in these videos every month I film the eyeshadow palettes that I have had enough time to sort of review and form my thoughts about. And pretty typically we are having 4 palettes today. Sometimes we might have more, sometimes less, but 4 is usually the amount that I have in one video, because I usually, how I rotate my makeup is that I sort of change my makeup every 2 weeks, and for me 2 weeks is sort of enough time to go to the palette, go to each palette and review at least most of the shades and sort of get my thoughts about the formula. As always, you will be seeing the pictures and sort of 3 demo looks and swatches of the palette in this corner, and sometimes we have these in ranking order, sometimes there isn't that much sort of difference of opinion about was a palette better than other, but today these are actually also reviewed in the order that which were my least favorite to favorite, and unfortunately there was a 1 dot palette, so the first palette, which is, we are going to be starting from the worst of the palette, that is unfortunately going to get decluttered after this video, because it's no use for me keeping an eyeshadow palette in my pretty considerable eyeshadow palette collection when I already know that I wasn't happy with the quality and I'm not gonna use it. But anyway, let's start talking about the palettes that I have for this video. So the first, and unfortunately the worst of the bunch, and I had very much expectations for this one. So I finally got the Sigma Cool, was it Cool Neutrals palette? Yeah, that's what this was called. And this is a bit of an older palette. I was able to get this on Notino for a pretty good offer. And if you have not seen this one, I can actually show this maybe close by, because it's one of the rectangular ones. So this is a sort of mix of sort of warmer and cooler neutral shades. And my previous Sigma palette from this one was the Corda Rosa palette. That was like years and years ago. Unfortunately, even though that was actually one of my favorite palettes at the time, I didn't have YouTube channel, or I had a YouTube channel, but I wasn't making videos back then. Unfortunately, some of the shades in the Corda Rosa were causing eye irritation for me, so unfortunately I did have to declutter it. But I had overall, despite the few shades causing eye irritation, I did like the formula of the palette, and after that one, I haven't really ordered any Sigma, but then when I saw that this was on Tino and it was on an offer, I thought that I saw a lot of people giving a lot of praise for this one when this was launched last year. I was thinking that, yeah, that's actually something that I would probably like, especially since I have been into more of my neutral eyeshadow palettes. And I'm gonna pop now the looks and swatches on the side and maybe keep it like this so you can still see the palette. So, the shimmer shades in this one are very beautiful. This has a couple of like different formulas. We have some topper shades and then we have some more opaque shades. But generally I do say that the shimmers were the sort of thing that I really liked about this palette and the versatility we had. But unfortunately, if I buy a mixed palette that has both shimmers and mattes, especially if it's a 50-50 split like in this one, I need the mattes to work out. And unfortunately, like, I don't remember the Corda Rosa having this dry of a matte formula, and sometimes I don't mind a drier formula. We will see a Glamlite palette later in this video, and Glamlite is known for having a bit more drier, thinner formula. However, compared to the Glamlite one, I had a lot of issues with this one. I just felt that a lot of the shades were hard to blend, they were hard to make look, hard to get to look nice on my sort of crease area, and I wasn't just having a good time. And it was odd because I did feel that the mattes also swatched quite decently, so just based on the swatches and feeling this out, the mattes didn't feel like they were, because sometimes you can feel when you swatch out some shades that if it's a very sort of patchy and dry quality already in your swatch, you can kind of guess that, okay, this isn't probably gonna work out. But yeah, I was pretty disappointed with this one, and unfortunately, even though I do love the shimmer shades in this one, but I know that because it's a 50-50 split, I'm not gonna reach for this for the shimmers alone. I really would have needed this matte to work out in order for me to keep this palette. So unfortunately, this is a dud for me, and unfortunately I'm gonna be decluttering this one. If you have tried any other of these rectangular Sigma palettes, do let me know in the comments, have you had similar experiences with their sort of like formulas, because considering that I mostly saw positive reviews about this one during last year when this was launched, I was a bit like baffled that the experience that I had with this one was so bad in terms of the matte ones. But the shimmer shade's beautiful, but unfortunately it's just not enough for me to make me keep this one. Okay, so from here on onward all the palettes are good and I'm definitely keeping them. I just liked some some better than others, and in this case I did have actually like clear favorites how I wanted to place these. So on spot number 3, and the sort of second palette I have for this video was this one. So this is the Glamlite X Team Jacob palette from the Twilight collaboration. So within this range there was the Team Jacob and Team Edward palettes, then they had a highlighter and some lip kits, and I think there was maybe a mirror and a sort of makeup bag, because that's what Glamlite always does. So this is how this is looking like. So it's a kind of a neutral palette with a pop of green. That is how I would describe this one. This is definitely for me, and why this is perhaps ranking a bit lower is for the color story. So for me this is a very sort of end of the fall-esque color story. I did try this one. It's been like quite a while when this was on my rotation, but I do remember already thinking when I was trying this out, because we were like somewhere around May, I think it was when I was having this in my rotation. I was kind of feeling that in terms of color stories and the looks I got, that this feels kind of a fall palette for me. I'm gonna pop in the looks and swatches. So I do have to say that in terms of the quality that this palette has, this I feel like Glamlite has been pretty like good in improving their formulas, in at least with the palettes that I have been trying out, but this palette so far I think has the best formula that at least I have tried from Glamlite. The shimmers are nice and opaque, but they have a little bit, they have a bit I would say like special sparkles, and there isn't like I think any official multichromes or duochromes in this particular palette, but there is like bit something dimensional with the shimmers in this one, and also the matte shades, even though again I will say that Glamlite definitely has a more thinner, bit more on the drier side kind of matte formula. It is a formula that still builds very, very well. You can layer it quite well and it just blends out. So with this one, even though it has a dry leaning matte formula, it is not unlike the Sigma one that it's unworkable. Everything blends and works out together so well. Something I will say about this color story, so when you look this at the pan, you might think that it's pretty warm leaning color story, but actually most of the looks that I got this one, I felt that were actually quite of more like cool tone leaning look. So I think a couple of the warmer mattes might give you the idea that it's a warm leaning neutral palette, but I felt that actually more of the looks kind of turned out to be more cool tone leaning rather than warm ones. So that is just something like small that I sort of figured out when I was using this one. So I do think that if you were eyeing this particular palette, and even though if you're into Twilight fan, I'm definitely not a Twilight fan, I found the whole concept of very cringe-worthy when the movies came out. I never was a fan of these typical teenage movies that came out during the time, but I definitely wasn't a fan of the franchise. But I do think purely based on just the color story and how well the formula is made for this one, I would definitely recommend getting it. Next is a more bigger palette, and this was actually a first time for me trying this particular brand. So from Monolith Shops, and this shows that with some of these it's been a hot while when I tried this, but this is a Klarity Rain palette. This was officially released last year, and when this was launched last year, I think it was somewhere around end of the fall, and I was thinking that yeah, I could get that one. However, that reminds me a lot of a summer palette, but then when this was on Easter sale on Monolith Shop, I was thinking that hey, now it's the perfect season because we're getting closer to the summer, and now I could actually like I would be interested to try this out, and because it was on sale I thought that okay, let's try it out. This is definitely a heavier palette than all the other palettes that I'll be showing, but these are magnetized, so if you get this and you're thinking that oh that's heavy, that's the reason. So I think this was a good first palette to try from Klarity because of the variety you get with this one. This has a range from matte neutrals to sort of more colorful shades. There are shimmers. This is a more matte heavy palette, so I think it's pretty obvious when you look at it, and I'm gonna now pop in the swatches so you can kind of see that also how the colors looked out. But definitely if you prefer having more shimmers than mattes, then this might not be the palette for you. But for me, I didn't mind that it had less shimmers because I did actually feel that the matte quality in this one, it was very surprised me positively, because in the past I did see that Klarity's palettes have gotten quite hit and miss reviews. They definitely had some, I think, developing to do with their formulas, but definitely with this one, even some of the shades colorful shades that I thought that would be very hard to work with, everything layered nicely and everything mixed in nicely, and I do think this was kind of a very fun palette altogether. I think if it would have only been for the matte shades in this one, I would actually rank this first, but unfortunately, one of the shimmer shades here is one of the worst shimmers that I have ever tried, and that is why it's ranking like it's dropping to the second. And especially I think if this would have had more of a even split between mattes and shimmers, then I would have not been so harsh about this. But because we don't actually have that many shimmers in this one, I had pretty high expectation that all shimmers should work out. So the shimmer that I am talking about is this one here, and what kind of also bummed me about the fact that this doesn't work out is that this is the only neutral leaning shimmer, so all the other shimmers are a bit on the colorful side, and because this still has quite a lot of neutrals, I would have actually wished for another neutral shimmer. But this particular shimmer, like even though it's a pressed shimmer shade on the pan, this is like opening a flower bag when you get it on your eyes. I literally had like streaks of shimmer all over here when I tried to apply the shade with my fingers. I also tried to apply it with my brush. I even wetted my brush, which is not something that I like to do, and it still didn't stick to my lids. I had like basically like silver streaks everywhere except like where the eyeshadow was supposed to go. So unfortunately with this particular shade, this kind of like almost ruined the whole palette for me. But because now I know that this unfortunately is just completely unusable as an eyeshadow shade, I just know that I won't use it, and then I just work with the other shimmers. With the rest of the shimmer shades, they worked out very well. There wasn't any issues that they didn't stick to your lids or the fact that the shimmer went like all over your face. So it's just the one shimmer, but it's very unfortunate because it's the only neutral leaning shimmer on the pan, and it looked pretty beautiful swatched out, and I didn't feel, when I swatched out this more like neutral taupe leaning shimmer, it did kind of feel bit like on the drier side, but even watching it out, I couldn't like predict that it was going to be such a hot mess, which it was when I actually used it. But yeah. But if you can overlook the one sort of dud shimmer that this has, I do think this would actually be a good palette for you, especially if you haven't tried Klarity before, because I do think you get a nice mix of their like different kind of formulations and different kind of shades, because this has, I think, like a bit of everything to everyone. And drum rolls, please. I think if you saw my updated neutral eyeshadow palette favorites video, you kind of knew that this might be coming. So this was the only palette that I got from Monolith Shop's May launch here, because they actually just had the June launch when I'm filming this video, and actually did shop the June launch, so there's going to be a couple of palettes from that in the future. So this was the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural, and because I didn't have either the original version, so this was a revamped, re-released version of the original version of this particular palette. And because I didn't have the original version of this palette, nor did I have the Burly Basic palette, I thought that this was actually a pretty good time to get this. Now, my relationship with Glaminatrix palettes hasn't been a bit complex, because I did get the Rich Romantic last year, and in terms of color story, the Rich Romantic was perfect for me. However, the issue was that it had shimmer shades that didn't only crease a little bit, they actually creased so badly that, for example, if I wore the palette on a longer work day, basically at the end of the day I didn't have any shimmer on my lid, it creased so badly that the shimmer's gonna crease away. So since this is ranking quite highly, and I can now show the looks and swatches, you can probably guess that they actually fixed the shimmers for this one. This has truly, it's definitely a different shimmer formula that was in the Rich Romantic. This is one of the, I think, smoothest indie shimmer formulas that I've tried for like a good while. It's very smooth, it's very sparkly. I would even dare to say that because some indie shimmers, they just don't work on textured eyelids. With this one, I would actually dare to say that these shimmers actually do work for textured eyelids, because they are so smooth, they don't crease, they don't do anything funny when you sort of layer them on your eyelid. And they just offer the most beautiful sparkle, and the sort of end result is just wonderful. I would say that still in terms of like neutral eyeshadows, is this like perfect, and maybe some of the sort of eyeshadow palette favorites we saw in my recent neutral eyeshadow palette favorites video. There are a couple of things that I would tweak with this one. So first of all, in terms of shades, I don't think we needed these two shades. We could have just had one bone colored shade, and this could have been some kind of other, like maybe even a mid-tone shades. Second is with the shimmers, there are a bit of repetition, so actually these two shimmers end up looking pretty similar on the lids. They end up looking kind of silvery like even the red one, which kind of pans seems that has nothing silver, but actually when I laid it on my lid, it looks pretty silver against the mattes that I wore it. Similarly, these two rose gold shades kind of looking similar. So with this one, I do feel that in terms of formula, very impeccable. The mattes work beautifully, and as I already said, the shimmer formula, I was like, wow, this is definitely an improvement to the Rich Romantic, but there is a bit of a repetition with some of the shades that are in this one, which is why I do think that while this is going to be ranking relatively high in my mid-year ranking that you are going to be seeing from all the eyeshadow palettes somewhere around July. I'm not going to be promising you any dates, but it's going to be coming on July. So this is probably going to rank relatively high, but there are some things in this one in terms of the color choices, which is why this isn't still the like my absolute favorite of all the eyeshadow palettes that I've tried doing this year in general, or even from the neutral eyeshadow palettes that I have. But still, even despite some of the like duplication between the different shades, I do think this is a beautiful quality. They truly like nailed this, and I'm very pleased especially about the shimmer formula, because I really wanted to like the Rich Romantic palette, but unfortunately it has the downsides of it that I already said, then why it wasn't the perfect palette for me. But in terms of the fact that in terms of formulas, this is pretty much, I think, perfection, and I think a lot of people would actually enjoy using it. Even some people who haven't maybe been that into indie palettes, because they might seem intimidating or hard to work because of some of the formulas that are in the indie palettes, but this definitely is an indie formula that I would actually recommend also to someone who is maybe looking to try out some indie eyeshadows. Comment down below, what did you think about the palettes that I had to review for this video? Have you tried any of them? What did you think about them? Or what have maybe been your top favorites or fail in terms of new eyeshadow palettes that you have been trying out recently? If you liked this video, push the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell button if you want to get notifications from future content. You can also find me with the same nickname, Makeup Hedgehog, on Instagram. I hope I'll see you soon in the video. Bye bye!